justify using any three poems from the selection that African poets are social critics. Here we are about criticisms. We are on satire. First of all, you should know that they satirize war, moral decadence, poor governance, neglect, assimilation, and man's inhumanity. In the casualties, Clark satirizes or condemns those who plunge their countries or communities into war because they cannot see eye to eye with their opponents. His condemnation comes from the fact that when they cause war, they fly abroad and live in luxurious hotels, leaving those who had nothing to do with the start of the war to suffer. He therefore says that in a war condition, no one is free. Everyone is a casualty. We will lose one thing or the other in one way or the other. People will lose their loved ones. People will lose their property. Environment will be destroyed. Livelihoods will be destroyed. And those who started the war will not be there to see how bodies and corpses are piled for a war which they had started. And it says, a war is like starting a dance which you do not know when it will end. The poem condemns, the poem highlights the futility of war and an appeal for human beings to listen to one another so that in terms of differences, they might always have a point of compromise and spare the people of hardship. And he ends. At the end, it will all is celebrated, will all witness celebrated cases of kwashiorkor. People will suffer from malnutrition, famine. This is a poem that reminds us of the harsh reality of the Nigerian-Biafran War, in which more than 5 million people alone died of hunger and starvation because the Federal Republic of Nigeria had put an air and sea blockade to Biafra. There are also social critics about moral decadence. Flora is a young girl who would have nurtured her beauty, waiting for a nice and decent man who is responsible to get married to her. And she maintains her dignity of womanhood. She spends her time in nightclubs. She changes from one man to another. She's not satisfied with having one man. She's attracted to some men at first sight. And just for some reason. Some because they are athletic. Some because they know how to play the guitar. Some because they are university students. Some because they are politicians. But at the end, she dumps all of them, shattering them emotionally. When she learns that the politician has not been re-elected, she dumps him. A man who does not even have the qualifications. But at the end of it all, the poet says, she will end up being miserable without a man in her life, highlighting infidelity, materialism, lack of human conscience. The same can be seen in No Coffin, No Grave, where young girls are the beck and call of politicians who spray money on them, take them to nightclubs, and they become their sex toys. African poets are also social critics to the bad governance. Africa, with all its resources, would have developed, but its leaders are corrupt. inefficient, have no roadmap for development for their various countries. In rulers, the leader lives in a castle with chandeliers, drinking champagne, in a land which has been overexploited by him and his white cohorts, where the people wallow in poverty. And the Poco says, they are just like a boat on a rough ocean. The end will come soon. They have no roadmap. In no coffin, no grave, the politician has embezzled much money and built a wonderful mansion for himself. In his mind, he wants to be buried with all the honors due his person, and that there will be a lot of beer. And the rest of the money that he has embezzled, he spends it in nightclubs with girls, drinking and spreading money. Why his electorate do not have food, do not have mosquito nets, do not have the basic necessities. As punishment for his reckless and wayward life, he is shot and abandoned to be eaten by vultures in front of the nightclub. African poets are critics of neglect and assimilation. In Sellout, our brother has been assimilated by the white man's way of life in his dressing and even mannerism. He has money, yet he has neglected his homeland, where he comes from, his mother's hut, his tradition. His tuxedo coat is already a way to say that he has denied where he comes from, even his culture. But there is a warning note at the end of the poem. When the white man will have no need of him anymore, he will come back to the place that he had neglected. And the soul will be hard for him, because even his ancestors will turn their backs. And he will lead his last days in misery. African poets are social critics because they condemn man's inhumanity to man. In cold, the prisoners are left without proper clothing. They sleep in wet floors. They move bare feet. And they are exposed in the cold. And they eat sugarless pap. The warden only refers to them as rats that should be killed. That's to tell you that the wardens do not even consider the prisoners as human beings. In the sounds begin again. It is the sounds of torture. As the white South African police runs into the ghettos, kicking doors, subjecting its occupant to pain that is unknown to those who are free. Their wailing rises like music and falls down, according to the intensity and brutality of the torture that they receive. And the poets want that the world should know what Africans have been going through. In the screams, it is about the death of many people killed by the white South African police and abandoned in the fields without even having the decency and the courtesy to give them a befitting burial. You can see bones coming out from their sockets, bodies being eaten by vultures. We are told that even nursing mothers are not exempted, with the indication that some of them are even raped before being killed. It's very pathetic. But African poets want to use their poems to put out this message so that the world can know what Africa has gone through. African leaders can learn that they have much to do to make their people to be satisfied, that the young African woman should take back her place and the dignity that once belonged to the African woman. And lastly, that wars have never brought peace. They have only brought suffering to mankind. Thank you for listening. Share our video and a link to other students. Bye-bye.